In March of 2016, Jamie LeBate, an employee of Xerox, called the FBI tip line after the press conference. He told us that he had gone to the Webster Police Department in 2003 with his father and tried to provide certain information about an individual.
He came after hours, and he was greeted by one of our road patrol sergeants. He wanted to speak to Chief Pickering, and only Chief Pickering, and the road patrol sergeant said, sorry, either he's not here or he's already gone, whatever words they exchanged. Jamie and his dad left and never followed up with either the chief or anyone else at the police department.
Jamie told us that his father had passed away in January of 2016, and he saw the press conference a few months later, and he felt that it was a sign from his dad to come forward with the information that he had. He felt incredibly burdened by the fact that he had held on to the information. We met him in my truck. The person he provided to us worked for a period of time while Jamie was in that particular division in what they called scuff. It was a refurbishing section where they would sandblast and paint copier parts. The name of the person he provided to us was Richard Wilburn. The next step is to try and find out everything about him. The SOS, Staff Operations Specialist, would run all the background, and shortly after I had given her Richard Wilburn's name, she came back to my desk and said, you've got to take a look at this guy.
First thing on his rap sheet is a bank robbery. Back in 1980, he disguised himself by putting pantyhose over his face.
One of the patrons in the bank realized it was a bank robbery, ran out and called the police. They stopped Richard before he even was able to get out of the parking lot with the car and arrested him right then and there. He served several years in jail. And then he has another conviction in 1987 down in Virginia for possession of a sawed-off shotgun, which was illegal.
My name is Ray Wilburn, and I'm the son of Richard Wilburn, and I live in Rochester, New York. My dad did tell me before I was born, he had an altercation with a bank, and he did time, I think about a year and some change or something like that. He said that was gonna be the last time, and the best thing happened in his life was me being born, so they put his focus and everything else towards something else, and he bettered his life since then. Growing up in Rochester, New York, it was always me and him. He was a single black parent. We wasn't on food stamps. We didn't get assisted living or anything like that. My dad was always working. I went to prep school 2003 in Winston, Massachusetts, and I was on the basketball team. There was never a shortage of money.
According to Ray, his father was a devoted dad. The FBI digs deeper and hones in on Wilburn's past international travel.
Richard Wilburn made more than a dozen trips to Japan. And what's most interesting about that is the only piece of evidence that was found at the crime scene was an umbrella with Japanese writing on it.
It had stickers which clearly had been placed on the umbrella by a proprietor selling that particular umbrella.
And the FBI translation team said that it was a specific shop in a specific area near Tokyo. So when you find out about someone's travels and you look at the people they may have traveled with, we learned through various investigative techniques that one of his associates that Richard had traveled to Japan with was Kadir.
So investigators want to talk to him.
Kadir knew Wilburn for years, but Kadir and Richard were no longer very close. It wasn't that they were enemies, they didn't have a falling out, but they were acquaintances at this point. So he had no reason to try to protect Richard.
We learned the travel to Japan was to bring marijuana to Japan.
We never found out exactly how much money they were getting, but we were told it was a substantial amount. It was tough to get marijuana in Japan, so they were paying top dollar for it.
We showed Kadir the picture of the Xerox suspect without specific facts as to what happened that day, and he identified the person in that photograph as being Richard Wilburn. He also noted the FBI raid jacket, and then he indicated that when they were in Japan, there were a number of shops that sold law enforcement memorabilia, FBI, DEA, ATF, NYPD, jackets, hats, shirts, badges, and they would frequent these shops during their trips to Japan.
Richard began working for Xerox in 1997, but according to Xerox, he was not a model employee.
My father was always chronicle late and leaving early, which is not good, but he had to do what he felt he had to do his best for his kid. Because during those years, I was in 5th and 6th grade. He didn't want me at home by myself all the time because I didn't have no babysitter. And he just felt that management above him didn't understand the situation. He kind of felt that he was being unheard. He just felt like it was racial discrimination.
3 years later, in February 2000, Wilburn filed discrimination charges against Xerox. 1 year after Richard filed his lawsuit, he was fired for excessive absenteeism.
His termination was based off of him dealing with me, his child. And when they basically gave him an ultimatum for the job or his kid, he's gonna choose me every single time.
In 2001, Richard filed a lawsuit against Xerox, alleging race discrimination and harassment, as well as a claim that he was fired in retaliation for suing Xerox.
Richard Wilburn lost. The judge ruled in favor of Xerox, and so that case was closed.
After learning about Richard Wilburn's employment history, the FBI agents revisit the list of disgruntled black male employees that Xerox produced back in 2003.
Richard Wilburn's name was there, and everybody missed it. I hate using that word, I missed it, but it was there.
The FBI found his phone number in and amongst calls that had been made to the FBI.
We checked our public access line where people can call to make complaints. On this line, we discovered that Richard Wilburn had himself been calling, trying to talk to an agent, claiming that he was a victim of somebody trying to rent him a property that they didn't actually own.
So now that they found him, the next thing the FBI needs to do is get Wilburn's DNA.
We were very concerned he would try and run. So we devised a plan. He called Richard Wilburn to tell him we wanted to meet with him and talk with him about the real estate scam. And we wanted him to come to the FBI office in Rochester to sit down with us and talk about it.
So Andy comes up with this great idea to bring him in under a ruse that he was going to help us with this white-collar scam.
We knew he was down on his luck, and we thought a good motivation would be to sign him up as a source and potentially pay him. We had to create documents to sign him up as a source.
The paperwork said that you were agreeing to, come in and work with the FBI as a confidential human source about this white-collar crime, a fraud, or swindle, whatever you want to call it. And then I think there were a couple of ways that we, could monitor your conversations with this individual that we were targeting.
So while I was creating the documents, Seth said, what if we have him put the documents after he fills them out into an envelope and he seals the envelope? And I thought that was the most brilliant idea.
I, heard an arrest was made, and then I heard how they did it. And I just laughed. 13 years later, this was pretty good, the way it ended.
I received a phone call. I was told, we arrested somebody, they caught somebody, he's caught. And I just started crying, screaming, oh my gosh, it's not real. I'm overwhelmed with emotions because I was never expecting that day to come.
But not everyone is relieved by news of the arrest. Richard's son, Ray, is utterly blindsided.
2016, September 27th, I got a phone call from the FBI saying we needed to talk to you about your father. And I talked to him last night, so for the FBI to reach out to me, I'm thinking his life is on the line in a physical way. I said, okay, anything I need to know? And that was the first time I heard about a robbery at the Xerox Credit Union. So I wound up meeting with him. They said, well, we think he did, this bank robbery over in 2003. And I'm like, okay, I don't know nothing about that. They started showing me pictures and everything else, trying to make me ID that was him. And I said, I don't know who that person is. It wasn't my father, it was somebody else. He doesn't even have a murder or killing personality. He's a lovable guy, man. He's the greatest man I've ever been around, to be honest with you. No matter what goes on, he has a positive attitude.
This case was a big deal for Rochester and the FBI. The prosecution looks airtight. They have his DNA. They have the fact that he's a disgruntled Xerox employee. But cases are often much more complicated than they look to the public.
So trial started 3 years after his arrest. I was very confident that we had the right guy. I was less confident that we could convince 12 jurors that this was the right guy.
We didn't have the wig, the FBI jacket, or guns, but we had the DNA on that umbrella.
The defense team questioned the validity of the technique of the DNA testing.
Touch DNA testing is the best chance to be able to develop a profile, and in this case, there's a match.
They were just trying to attack the evidence that we had rather than giving some sort of alternate story as to how his DNA ended up in the credit union that day.
The defense also challenges the surveillance photos from the day of the robbery as an accurate means of identifying Richard.
For me, the most compelling testimony came from the employees of the bank that day that testified.
When I saw him sitting at the trial, I looked at him and he didn't have any emotion, he didn't have any remorse, but I didn't stare. I know the jury was looking at me because they were listening. I was just a good witness that day.
After Carl Wisniewski steps down from the witness stand, the prosecution asserts that Wilburn was desperate for the money.
So the prosecution theorized that the main reason that he went into the bank that day, I think, was to get money to pay some of these bills and to keep his son enrolled at the school that he was in. I don't think he went there necessarily premeditated that he was going to kill somebody, but I don't think that he ever hesitated when the time came, and he did it.
The 5-week trial concludes on November 8th, 2019, and the jury adjourns to deliberate.
When the jury went in, I was definitely nervous. I was like, they've got to convict him. They've got to. There's DNA. Like, how are they not going to convict him? But there's still that doubt of, are they going to?
I was nervous while they deliberated. I couldn't breathe.
The jury deliberates for approximately 7 hours before delivering their verdict.
A verdict is in. Richard Wilburn has been found guilty on all charges.
I ended up running out of the courtroom because I just needed to get out and get fresh air. It was so surreal, like, wow. I could breathe again.